What's going on, Edmonton? It's Austin here with YEGnation. Today we brought Mr. Andrew Knack in here from Ward 1 and came in front of the lovely Jasper Place Public Library here. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us on YEGnation.
Thanks for having me.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to the YEGnation community.
Absolutely. So my name's Andrew Knack. I'm the current city councillor for Ward 1 and hoping to stay on the job for a little bit longer. This has been my first term on city council, and I had run multiple times before. I first ran when I was 23 and lost horribly back then, but learned a lot over the years leading up to finally getting elected in 2013.
Awesome. So with that, that's actually a good point that I actually want to bring up about you. So you obviously ran at the age of 23, and that's an awesome start to politics. Why did you come back? Why did you keep running? And what have you learned from multiple elections?
So for me, when I first ran, and I've told the story a few times, and it's almost embarrassing because when I was 23, I was nowhere near as engaged as, like members of the City of Edmonton Youth Council or EdmontonElections or yourselves. I had never set foot in City Hall. I had just barely started following municipal issues. I primarily followed provincial and federal politics a lot more. And ultimately, I was thinking about the 2007 election because I always voted. I just didn't really follow municipal that much. But when I got looking at the candidates at the time, not knowing anything, having not actually been engaged, I felt like I wasn't getting represented. It's rare to typically see younger people on city councils, particularly in larger cities, and so I looked up and I found out you need 25 signatures and $100 to get your name on the ballot. And I thought, you know what? Why not? Like, even if I got just one vote, and that was my own, like maybe that's good enough because I feel like then I can vote for somebody that I feel was going to be able to do the job well. Now looking back, I'm sure glad I didn't because I wouldn't have been able to do the job well. But it was through that experience of knocking on doors, getting engaged with community leagues in the city, that I really developed a desire of public service. That transition, I was a business grad from U of A, and from that moment on, after the 2007 election, I realized that I want to serve the public in some way, whether that's as an elected official or just working with the City of Edmonton, working with Edmonton Public Library, some group that has regular connection with the public every day.
That's awesome, and that's a very exciting story. Thanks for sharing that. It gives a lot of perspective as to what it actually takes to be on city council, and people trying to get involved and what they may want to do for that. So thank you very much for sharing that. You had mentioned that you work with the Edmonton Youth Council, the City Youth Council, as well as NextGen here. What are you seeing in the younger communities, and how are the younger communities of Edmonton getting engaged differently than maybe the older communities?
Well, I think we're starting to see a bigger push, and both Youth Council and NextGen have different roles to play. Youth Council is very focused on actually creating policy recommendations to City Council on issues that impact youth, and of course their mandate focuses on that 13 to 23 demographic, so it includes people that can't yet vote but are interested, and also those that can vote, maybe will be able to vote for the first time. So I've seen a lot of movement from them over the last number of years, particularly because they refocused their mandate. They shrunk the main council down and expanded the opportunities for other people to get involved. So it actually worked out quite well. We used to have General Assembly meetings where there were 40 or 50 people in a room, which, while great, hard to make decisions when you're doing that. So they reformed into a group of 20. But the youth at large members can be involved every day, working on projects on whatever interests them. So we have groups on health and wellness, we have engagements committees that focus on trying to get the youth more involved in shaping the city the way they want. Because, for years we heard stories about youth often leaving the city because what they wanted they couldn't find in the city anymore. So what better way to help shape that than actually being able to recommend policy?
I would say so.
And then on the NextGen side, their role is really to build that awareness, to engage, to put on events, to educate and inform, and they don't make policy recommendations themselves, but they engage the wider 18 to 40 demographic to help make sure people know what the issues are, why they're important, why they need to be focused on it, why they need to share their voice. This all, with both Youth Council and NextGen, it stems from the fact that, when I first ran at 23, and more importantly, as I started to get more involved after that, I would go to city council meetings as a younger guy who had a retail business in West Edmonton Mall, and I'd go whenever I could, and it was extremely rare to see young people at City Hall speaking about issues or even just in attendance, because younger people are busy. They've got work, they've got life, they don't have the ability to take a day off work and come out. And so seeing that we now have groups that are working to get those people involved, to get that under 40 crowd involved, making sure they realize that their voice makes a huge difference, that it actually can really help balance out sometimes our discussions, giving councillors a different perspective about what we're debating. Because when we make our decisions, we're supposed to be making decisions for what's best for all of Edmonton, not just our wards, and making sure that we are making decisions that are going to be good for 30 or 50 or 100 years out. And so it's really good to see this coming together. And so even your work here is fantastic, because you're giving a platform to people to have a say about what's going on, and making sure they are getting informed about the various issues.
That's why YEGnation.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So again, you brought up a great point that I'd love to touch on. So as now being a councillor for a full term, and again being that you had some interest in politics as a younger gentleman, and still obviously being in politics, what do you find is maybe one of the harder things about being a councillor, being able to try to represent your ward but also make those decisions for the city, and again those 30, 40, 50-year decisions, those are important but tough to deal with sometimes. And
there's the biggest struggle, because you even see right now, during this election campaign, you have people talking about, we need somebody who's going to fight for our ward, or exclusively worry about our part of the city. And councillors take an oath to serve all of Edmonton, not just their ward. And oftentimes you hope that that's going to be one and the same. What is best for your ward will also be best for the city. That's the goal. But yeah, there are times where we make decisions on, a rezoning application where we're going to put in something that's slightly higher density than what was there in the past, that the local community doesn't want. Yet, generally speaking, when you go talk to the city at large, people say, yeah, we want to increase density in our mature communities, help make sure there's a population for the schools, help make sure the businesses have enough people to keep it viable, make sure we're not using up as much farmland, make sure we're not spending as much money building all those new developments. So when you look at something like that, what's typically best for the city, but not always, is that, yeah, you want to approve something that's a higher density development across from a school or a park site, across from major transit. But yeah, there are going to be times where you run into the local neighbors who really don't want that. And your role as a councillor is to hopefully engage, have conversations about that, but note that even at the end, if the end result is that they are going to be completely opposed, they do not want it at all, unless there's a good planning reason that site doesn't make sense, your role as a councillor is still to say, no, this makes most sense for the community, right, for the city, and for people who might want to live here, or who might want to buy a home in 10 years or in 20 years that can't afford a lot of the housing available. We're right across the street right now from where I live, and this 3-story condo development right behind me, where I live, was originally opposed by the community, and thankfully the community worked together with the developer. They made some changes, brought it down a story, and this building, I feel, has been a great addition to the community. That's how I got involved with community leagues in general. And then right beside me, there's another unit, a 10-unit row housing development that replaced 2 houses. And yeah, the community was initially a little bit hesitant there, but we see the benefit of it now. We know that the housing prices there are going to be competitive with the suburban communities, which is what we often lack. So we have to be willing to take that lens, even knowing that occasionally that's going to mean that some of the people living within your ward aren't going to be happy with your decision.
For sure. Well, and Edmonton's a very big city, and I don't know the exact sizing of Ward 1, but Ward 1 is huge. Yeah. And even in other wards that are smaller in the city, it's still notable to think that just because something doesn't make sense for you doesn't mean it doesn't make sense for the entire ward. So and specifically for the development thing, it can be alarming. And I live I live southeast Edmonton, and I was driving down Millwoods Road, and it blew my mind to see a 4-story condo development in the middle of Millwoods Road beside the Husky gas station that's like falling apart. But it's necessary, right? It's necessary for the environment to succeed.
Yeah, and to provide variety, right? And that's the thing, and it's tough for, again, when that change is occurring in your community, it's hard to maybe get supportive, to understand it. You might initially react as defensive, but I was just visiting with a group of seniors in a seniors residence. So these are people that have had to leave their communities because they didn't have other housing choices.
Right.
They needed a little more support. It was still an independent living building, but really a lot of our mature communities have single family homes, and we have old apartment buildings without elevators. And so we often, while it's important to think about housing diversity for young families and young Edmontonians, it's also important to think about that for aging Edmontonians, people that want to live in their community for as long as possible. And it was fascinating just going to this group, and I meet with them every 6 months, so this is a regular conversation. But for them, they all find, they sort of laugh about the fuss of infill, because they're like, well, for us, we completely understand why we need it. We've experienced, they've had to leave their communities because they didn't have anything else.
Right.
Again, it's tough though, and you don't want to just randomly put up development in random locations. There still needs to be a plan. There still needs to be work with communities to develop as best you can buy-in. But there will be times that, some people just won't support it, and that's going to be tough.
Absolutely. Well, so with that here, the very last thing that I wanted to touch on with you here is the last mandate of YEGnation. Give us 1 second here. There's a passing ambulance.
It's the benefit of living beside a fire hall. This case was an ambulance, but there's always good activity going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's amenities and things people can respond to you quick, so you can't complain. So as I mentioned, the last thing that I wanted to touch on with YEGnation and what we're trying to get more diversity and culture diversity and gender diversity on city council, but just in general, and be more accepting of that as a city. We're pretty accepting. I mean, we're Edmonton. We're, it is what it is. But so if you can talk to us a little bit about how that's going on in Ward 1, and maybe some things you might want to change, or what you like that's progressing so far.
Yeah, I think when it comes to diversity as a city, as a council, again, I look no further than both Edmonton Next Gen and the City of Edmonton Youth Council. You go look at the makeup of both committees, and they are representative of a diverse Edmonton. And it's encouraging to see that. It's encouraging to see a diverse group of people fill in on a leadership opportunity to help shape the future of their city. We definitely need to do better, though, on council. I mean, I maybe get to still, because I'm the youngest member of council at 33. That's maybe the one piece of the diversity, but otherwise I get it. I'm a white male. I don't have much hair anymore, so which is why I wear the hat. And I'm glad that I've been able to be a part of this, but I also recognize that our role is to make sure we're not just talking to people like us, to people like myself, that we're reaching out to engage as many people as possible. And so it's for me, like, why I've gone to a lot of the women's advocacy Voice of Edmonton meetings. Not being a woman, I can't say what the key issues are. And it was really enlightening for me to just go out to a meeting, sit down, shut up, and listen, and find out that transit safety is still a big deal. That was a couple of years ago, and we made some changes since then, but I hadn't even thought about that. I took transit my first year on council every day. I never felt unsafe, even if I was leaving City Hall at 11 at night. It didn't matter. I'd put on my headphones, I'd get on the bus, and I'd sit there, and never felt unsafe. Yet, then you go into this room of incredible women who have a diversity of experiences, and almost universally everyone said, no, I don't feel safe, or I know people who don't feel safe or don't feel comfortable getting on our transit system. And how eye-opening that is into realizing that, if you're not reaching out as much as possible to hear from other people who aren't like you, that it's going to be really hard to make those decisions for what's best for all of Edmonton. And so the city has a lot more work to do, but I think we're starting to see it on the agencies, boards, and commissions. I think we need to work harder to, again, reach out to more people who might not know even where to look for these opportunities to get engaged, right? That's you know, we still struggle with even with youth council of getting certain parts of the city to get applications from. So what is it that we're missing? We have to really dig into that, and it's hard because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So the city has a lot of work to do. We cannot say that we are doing, like, we're doing okay, but we got to do a lot better. So something like this
Right.
is important because you're reaching out to a group that I hope maybe hadn't considered voting before, maybe hadn't considered getting involved, and just watching this goes a long way in helping to build that awareness, and maybe hopefully make the people watching this think about, you know, what don't I know?
Right.
What perspectives am I not hearing or seeing? What do I need to do to get to be aware of those perspectives?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we have to do that as a city, we have to do that as a city council, we have to do that just as individuals.
Absolutely. Andrew, I can't thank you enough for joining us here.
Oh,
It's fantastic to have you here.
My pleasure.
So we're definitely going to get some more links to Next Gen, to the Youth Council. So you guys, if you guys are interested in getting involved or checking out more of that information, you can. The ward forum for Ward 1 is actually tonight, correct?
Right, in a few hours.
In a few hours, so this video will not be up by then. But we are going to be posting up some information on the ward forums here. Guys, get out and get involved, get talking, have that communication, have that two-way talk. These guys are here to listen as counselors, and we want you guys to do that here. This is YEGnation. Thanks for joining us.